The morning sun cut through the chain-link fence surrounding the Special Operations compound as Lieutenant Sarah Chun stepped out of the sedan. She adjusted the strap of her tactical bag and took in the sprawling facility before her. Concrete buildings lined the perimeter, their windows reflecting the harsh California light. The sound of distant gunfire echoed from the training ranges beyond the main structures. 3 operators stood near the equipment bay entrance, their conversation stopping the moment they noticed her approach. The tallest one, his arms crossed over a faded unit shirt, nudged his companion. Sarah kept her expression neutral as she walked toward the main building entrance. "Is she admin?" the first operator said, his voice carrying across the parking area. "Maybe liaison," the second one replied. His partner shook his head slowly. Sarah pushed through the double doors into the operations center. The air conditioning hit her immediately, a stark contrast to the heat outside. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead as she made her way down the corridor toward the command section. Her boots clicked against the polished floor with each step. The briefing room door stood open. Inside, Commander James Hayes sat at the head of a long table, reviewing documents spread before him. 2 more operators occupied chairs along the side, both looking up as Sarah entered. Hayes glanced at his watch, then at her, his eyebrows drawing together. "Lieutenant Chun," he said, setting down his pen. "You're early." "Yes, sir. Thought I'd get familiar with the facility before the official briefing." Hayes leaned back in his chair. The 2 operators exchanged glances. One of them, a muscular man with close-cropped hair and a scar along his jawline, folded his arms. The other, leaner with weathered features, tilted his head slightly as he studied her. "This is Torres." Hayes gestured to the scarred operator and Dalton. "Their team leads for Bravo and Charlie squads." Sarah nodded to each of them. Torres's expression remained unchanged. Dalton's lips pressed into a thin line. "Commander, I've reviewed the operational parameters you sent," Sarah said. "The insertion timeline seems tight given the terrain variables." Hayes picked up a folder from the table. "Lieutenant, before we get into operational details, I need to understand your assignment here. Your file is rather thin on specifics." "Most of my recent work has been classified, sir." Torres shifted in his seat. "Classified admin work," he said, "or classified field operations." The distinction seemed important to him. Sarah met his gaze steadily, but didn't elaborate. Hayes opened the folder. "It says here you completed basic infantry officer training and serve in a support capacity. That's quite different from direct action operations." "I'm familiar with the requirements, sir." "Familiar with and experienced in are 2 different things," Dalton said. His tone carried the weight of someone who had seen overconfident personnel fail before. "We run high-risk operations here. Our lowest-ranked operator has more combat deployments than most battalion commanders." The room fell silent for a moment. Sarah stood with her hands clasped behind her back, her posture relaxed but attentive. Hayes closed the folder and set it aside. "Look, no one's questioning your dedication," he said. "But this unit operates at a specific level. We need operators who can handle direct action, close-quarters combat, advanced reconnaissance." His pause stretched long enough to emphasize his next words. "Maybe you'd be better suited for an intelligence liaison role. Still important work, just different from what we do here." "Where are you watching this from?" Sarah thought suddenly, remembering similar moments throughout her career when assumptions were made based on surface-level observations. "Ever felt underestimated in your job before you even had a chance to prove yourself?" The memory of her first day at basic underwater demolition training flashed through her mind, followed by countless other instances where she'd had to demonstrate capability before anyone would listen. Torres stood and walked to the operational map mounted on the wall. $20, she doesn't make it past the first field exercise," he said to Dalton. His smile carried casual certainty. "She'll wash out during land navigation." Dalton chuckled quietly. "I'll take that bet. I give her until the shooting qualifications." Hayes raised his hand. "Enough. Lieutenant Chun is assigned here, so we work with what we have." He looked at Sarah directly. "Report to equipment issue at 1300 hours. We'll see how you handle the basic qualifications before we discuss operational assignments." Understood, sir. The briefing room emptied quickly after that. Sarah made her way back through the corridor, passing more operators who paused to watch her go by. Their expressions ranged from curious to dismissive. None looked particularly welcoming. Outside, the heat pressed down again. Sarah walked the perimeter of the compound, noting the layout of the ranges, the obstacle course, the rappelling tower. Everything was standard for a special operations facility, though the equipment looked newer than what she'd trained with previously. A group of operators ran past in formation, their cadence echoing off the buildings. By the equipment bay, the same 3 operators from earlier were still there. The tall one straightened as she approached. "You lost?" he asked, just familiarizing myself with the facility. He exchanged looks with his companions. "Right? Well, the admin building is that way." He pointed toward a smaller structure on the opposite side of the compound. Sarah didn't correct him. She simply nodded and continued her circuit. Behind her, she heard one of them laugh. The sound faded as she rounded the corner toward the armory. The rest of the morning passed in administrative processing. Identification cards, facility access codes, equipment locker assignments. Each staff member she encountered showed polite professionalism tinged with underlying skepticism. By noon, Sarah had completed most of the required paperwork and headed to the equipment issue point. The supplies sergeant, a grizzled operator with sergeant major stripes, looked up from his inventory sheet as she entered. "Chun," he said, not quite a question. "Yes, Sergeant Major." He pulled a standard field kit from the shelves and set it on the counter with a heavy thud. "This is basic load. If you need specialized equipment, you'll have to qualify for it first." "Understood." He watched as she inspected the kit, checking each item methodically. "Most new arrivals just sign and go," he said. "I prefer to know my equipment is complete before I need it in the field." Something shifted in his expression, a flicker of approval quickly masked. "Smart." He made a note on his sheet. "Report to range 4 at 1400. That's where they'll run you through qualifications." Sarah signed for the equipment and hefted the kit onto her shoulder. The weight was familiar, comfortable even. She'd carried heavier loads through worse conditions, but nobody here knew that yet. That was the point of starting fresh, she reminded herself. Clean slate, no expectations, no reputation to precede her. Just her skills and whatever she could prove when it mattered most. Range 4 sat at the far edge of the compound, separated from the main buildings by a quarter-mile of packed earth and scrub grass. Sarah arrived 10 minutes early, her issued rifle slung across her back and her range bag in hand. The afternoon heat shimmered off the concrete shooting platforms. Torres was already there, setting up target stands at various distances. He glanced over as she approached, but didn't acknowledge her otherwise. 2 other operators worked the 100-meter line, stapling fresh targets to wooden frames. "Chun," Torres called out without looking directly at her. "You're on platform 3. We'll start with basic marksmanship at 50 meters, then move back to 200 if you qualify." Sarah set her bag down and began unpacking her equipment. The rifle was standard issue, nothing special, but well-maintained. She performed a functions check, her hands moving through the familiar sequence automatically. Dalton emerged from the range shack carrying a clipboard and a spotting scope. He set up behind platform 3, his expression neutral, but his body language suggesting this was a waste of his time. Torres joined him a moment later. "Whenever you're ready," Dalton said. 10 rounds, 50 meters, standing unsupported. Passing standard is 8 in the black. Sarah loaded the magazine and chamber round. The weight of the rifle settled into her shoulder as she found her natural point of aim. She controlled her breathing, let the crosshairs steady, and began her string of fire. Each shot broke clean, the recoil familiar and manageable. "Cease fire," Dalton called after the 10th round. He raised his binoculars toward the target downrange. Torres walked to the spotting scope and peered through it. He was quiet for a moment. "All 10 in the black," he said. "Tight group 2. Dalton made a note on his clipboard. "Could be luck. We'll see how she does at distance." They moved back to the 200-meter line. The wind had picked up slightly, pushing across the range from left to right. Sarah adjusted her position and made a mental note of the wind speed based on the movement of the target frames. Same drill, Dalton said. 10 rounds, 200 meters, standing unsupported. Sarah went through the same process. Breath control, natural point of aim, steady trigger press. The increased distance required minor adjustments, but nothing she hadn't done thousands of times before. She fired her string and cleared her weapon. Torres checked the target again through the scope. 9 in the black, 1 just outside. His tone suggested he'd expected worse. That's qualified marksman standard. Most infantry officers struggle at 200 standing, Dalton said to Torres, loud enough for Sarah to hear. Maybe she's had more range time than her file suggests. They moved to the next phase, which involved timed magazine changes and multiple target engagements. Sarah performed each drill smoothly, her movements efficient without being rushed. Torres and Dalton watched closely, occasionally exchanging glances when she completed a task faster than expected. The final qualification involved shooting from various positions while moving between barriers. Sarah flowed through the course, transitioning from standing to kneeling to prone, engaging targets at varying distances. Her shot placement remained consistent throughout. When it was over, Dalton tallied the scores while Torres collected the used brass casings. Sarah cleaned her weapon and repacked her gear, aware that both operators were discussing something in low voices near the range shack. You qualified expert, Dalton said when he returned. That puts you in the top 20% of the unit. Thank you. Where did you train? Torres asked. That's not basic infantry marksmanship. I've had additional schools, Sarah said simply. Torres waited for her to elaborate. When she didn't, he shrugged. Well, shooting paper targets is one thing. We'll see how you do in dynamic scenarios. The next morning, Sarah reported to the operations center for her first official team briefing. The room was fuller now, with at least 15 operators present. Commander Hayes stood at the front, near a large monitor displaying satellite imagery of a compound in a desert environment. All right, everyone's here, Hayes said as Sarah took a seat near the back. This is a time-sensitive target package. Intelligence indicates a high-value individual will be at this location for approximately 72 hours. We need to plan and execute a direct action raid within that window. He brought up additional imagery showing the compound from multiple angles. 3 buildings, perimeter wall, single vehicle entrance on the north side. Guard force estimated at 12 to 15 personnel, moderately armed. Torres stood and moved to the monitor. I'm recommending a 3-team approach. Bravo takes the main building. Charlie secures the perimeter. Alpha holds quick reaction force in reserve. Hayes nodded. Dalton, what's your assessment of the vehicle entrance? Dalton stood and studied the image. It's a choke point. We'll need to breach it fast or find an alternate entry point. That wall is only 8 feet. We could scale it at multiple points and bypass the entrance entirely. The discussion continued for 20 minutes, with various operators offering input on tactics, timing, and contingencies. Sarah listened carefully, noting several factors they hadn't yet addressed. When there was a pause in the conversation, she raised her hand slightly. Hayes noticed. Lieutenant Shun, you have something to add. Yes, sir. The compound's water tower. She gestured to a structure visible in the satellite image. It provides direct line of sight to all 3 buildings and the entire courtyard. If they have even one competent observer positioned there, they'll see any scaling attempt long before we're over the wall. The room went quiet. Several operators looked at the image more closely. Torres zoomed in on the water tower. She's right, one of the operators said. We'd be exposed for at least 90 seconds during the climb. Hayes looked at Sarah. What's your recommendation? We need to neutralize that position first, either with a precision shot from outside the compound or by inserting a small element ahead of the main assault to secure it from within. Torres crossed his arms. That's easier said than done. The tower is 400 meters from any viable shooting position outside the wall. And inserting early risks compromise. 400 meters is manageable for a qualified marksman, Sarah said. And if we time it with a distraction at the main gate, the early insertion risk decreases significantly. Dalton turned to look at her directly. You're talking about coordinating multiple elements with split-second timing. That requires experience with complex operations. I understand the risk, Sarah said evenly. Hayes considered for a moment. It's a valid point about the tower. Torres, work it into your planning. We'll discuss the specifics of who handles what role later. The briefing continued, but Sarah noticed several operators glancing her way periodically. The dynamic had shifted slightly. She'd contributed something useful, but the underlying skepticism remained. Torres still looked doubtful. Dalton seemed more curious than convinced. After the briefing ended, Sarah gathered her notes and headed for the door. Hayes called her back. "Lieutenant," a word. She returned to the front of the room. Hayes waited until the others had filed out. "That was good tactical thinking in there," he said. "But pointing out problems is different from solving them under pressure. Theory versus execution." "I understand, sir." "Do you? Because right now, you're still an unknown quantity. You shoot well, you clearly have some tactical education, but we don't know how you'll perform when things go wrong. And in our line of work, things always go wrong." "I'm ready to prove myself, sir." Hayes studied her for a long moment. "You'll get your chance. We train hard here, harder than most units. If you can't keep up, it's better to know now than during an actual operation." "Understood." "Good. Report to the kill house at 0600 tomorrow. We'll see how you handle close quarters work." Sarah left the operations center and walked back toward her assigned quarters. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the compound. Ahead of her, she could see Torres and Dalton talking near the motor pool. They stopped when they noticed her, watching as she passed. Inside her room, Sarah unpacked her personal gear and organized her equipment for the next day's training. The kill house would be another test, another opportunity to demonstrate capability without revealing too much too soon. She'd run countless close quarters drills before, but none of these operators knew that. They saw what they expected to see, which was exactly how she'd planned it. The question was how long she could maintain the facade before the truth became impossible to hide. The kill house stood at the northern edge of the compound, a concrete structure designed to simulate urban combat environments. Sarah arrived in the pre-dawn darkness, her equipment already staged and ready. The air was cool, almost cold, a brief respite before the desert heat would return. Torres waited near the entrance with 4 other operators. They wore full tactical gear, helmets, and ballistic vests. A table nearby held additional equipment and ammunition. "Chun, gear up," Torres said. "We run live fire in here, so everything needs to be properly fitted." Sarah pulled on her vest and checked each magazine pouch. The weight distribution felt familiar. She secured her helmet and performed radio checks with the team. The other operators moved around her with practiced efficiency, their movements synchronized from countless repetitions. Dalton emerged from inside the kill house. "The scenario is straightforward," he said. "Hostage rescue. 3 rooms, multiple threats, 1 friendly. You'll be 4th in the stack. Follow your team leader's commands. Engage threats as they appear. Don't shoot the hostage." "Simple enough." "What's the engagement distance?" Sarah asked. "Most shots will be under 15 meters. Some as close as 5. Dalton gestured toward the entrance. "Torres will be running point. Stay close, move fast, communicate." They stacked up at the door. Sarah fell into position behind the 3rd operator, her rifle at low ready. Torres counted down with his fingers. 3, 2, 1. He breached the door, and the team flowed inside. The first room erupted in sound. Simulated gunfire cracked from electronic targets that popped up without warning. Torres engaged 2 threats on the left. The operator ahead of Sarah took 1 on the right. Sarah acquired a target in the far corner, a figure holding a weapon, and fired twice. The target dropped. "Moving," Torres called. They flowed through a narrow hallway. The second room was darker, lit only by dim overhead fixtures. Targets appeared from behind barricades and furniture. Sarah tracked her sector, engaging threats as they entered her field of view. Brass casings clinked against the concrete floor. The smell of gunpowder filled the enclosed space. "Friendly," the second operator called out. Sarah held her fire on a target that had appeared without a weapon. They pushed into the third room. This one was configured like a bedroom, with a bed frame, dresser, and closet. A hostage target sat in the corner, hands raised. Two threat targets flanked the doorway. Sarah engaged the left target while Torres took the right. Both dropped simultaneously. The team cleared the remaining corners and secured the room. "Clear," Torres announced. "Time." Dalton's voice came through the radio. 2 minutes, 18 seconds. No hostage hits. All threats neutralized. Reset for second run. They exited and rest staged. The morning light was starting to break over the horizon now, illuminating the compound in shades of orange and pink. Sarah reloaded her magazines while the other operators discussed adjustments to their positioning. Second run went faster. 1 minute, 53 seconds. Sarah's shooting remained accurate, her movements deliberate but quick. The third run introduced variables, doors that wouldn't open easily, targets that appeared at unexpected angles. Still, the team completed it without incident. After the fifth iteration, Torres called a break. The operators gathered around a cooler of water bottles, pulling off their helmets and wiping sweat from their faces. Sarah drank slowly, staying hydrated but not rushing. "You've run rooms before," one of the operators said to her. "It's obvious." "Some training," Sarah replied. "Where at?" Torres asked. "That's not basic infantry tactics." "Various schools." Sarah kept her answer vague. Torres didn't push further, but his expression showed he wasn't satisfied with the non-answer. Dalton approached the group, reviewing his notes from the morning's runs. "Chen's shooting is solid," he said to Torres. "Positioning could use work, but she's keeping up with the pace." The afternoon brought different drills. Vehicle interdiction scenarios, where the team had to stop and clear a moving target. Sarah adapted quickly, adjusting her tactics to the dynamic environment. Then came building clearing without the structured kill house setup, working through actual abandoned structures on the compound's edge where room layouts were unknown until entry. By evening, Sarah's uniform was soaked with sweat and covered in dust. The other operators looked similarly exhausted. They cleaned weapons together in the armory, the atmosphere slightly less hostile than before. Small talk began to emerge, though Sarah mostly listened. 3 days passed in similar fashion. Dawn workouts, tactical training, weapons drills, mission planning sessions. Commander Hayes observed many of the exercises, taking notes but offering little feedback. Sarah performed consistently, never the best operator in any single drill, but never the worst either. On the fourth morning, Hayes called her to his office. She arrived to find him reviewing a training report. "Sit," he said without looking up. Sarah took the chair across from his desk. "Your performance over the past few days has been adequate," Hayes began. "Better than adequate in some areas. You're keeping pace with experienced operators, which is notable." He set down the report. "But adequate isn't the standard here. We need exceptional." "I understand, sir." "Do you?" Hayes leaned forward. "Because here's my concern. You're technically proficient, but you're holding back. I can see it. Torres can see it. You're performing just well enough to not draw attention, but you're not pushing yourself to your actual limits." Sarah met his gaze, but remained silent. "I don't know what your deal is," Hayes continued. "Maybe you've got more experience than your file shows. Maybe you're sandbagging. Maybe you're just naturally cautious. But in 2 days, we deploy on that raid we've been planning. When we're on target, I need to know every operator is giving 100%. Not 90%, not holding anything in reserve. Everything. You'll have it, sir." "I hope so." Hayes pulled out another folder. "This is your assignment for the operation. You'll be with Charlie Squad, providing overwatch from an elevated position outside the compound. It's a support role, but it's critical. If that water tower observer you mentioned is real, you'll need to neutralize him before the assault team goes over the wall." Sarah took the folder and reviewed the specifics. The shooting position was 420 meters from the tower, elevated but not ideal. Wind would be a factor. Timing would be crucial. "Any questions?" Hayes asked. "What's the backup plan if I miss?" "You don't miss." Hayes' tone left no room for uncertainty. "That's why I'm putting you there. Your shooting scores say you can make this shot. Now you get to prove it matters under real conditions." "Understood, sir." "Good. Brief with Charlie Squad at 1600. Dismissed." Sarah left the office and walked across the compound toward the range. The mission was taking shape. Her role was defined. In 48 hours, she'd be behind a rifle scope with real lives, depending on her accuracy. She found an empty shooting platform and settled in, running calculations in her head. 420 meters, probable wind speeds, elevation difference, target size. The variables aligned like an equation waiting to be solved. Torres appeared beside her after several minutes. Working out the shot, he said, "It's not a question." "Yes." He sat down on the bench nearby. "Look, I don't know what your story is, but Hayes doesn't hand out critical shots to people he doesn't trust. If you're on that rifle, he believes you can make it happen. I won't let the team down. See that you don't." Torres stood. "Because if that observer sees us coming and sound the alarm, people die. Our people." He walked away without waiting for a response. Sarah returned her attention to the calculations. The shot was challenging but achievable. She'd made longer shots in worse conditions, but none of these operators knew that. They were trusting her based on range scores and training performance, which made the weight of that trust somehow heavier. The sun began its descent toward the horizon. Sarah remained at the range, visualizing the shot sequence over and over. Breath control, trigger press, follow through. 420 meters. One shot to prove she belonged here, even if they didn't yet know just how much she belonged. Tomorrow would bring final preparations. Equipment checks, mission rehearsals, contingency planning. But tonight, Sarah allowed herself a moment of reflection. She'd chosen to start fresh, to prove herself without the weight of her previous accomplishments. Now that decision would be tested in the most direct way possible. She shouldered her rifle and headed back toward her quarters. The compound lights flickered on as darkness settled over the base. Somewhere in the operations center, mission plans were being finalized. In 48 hours, theory would become reality. Sarah was ready. The only question was whether the team would recognize just how ready she truly was. The operations center hummed with activity the next morning. Maps covered every available wall space, satellite images projected onto multiple screens, and equipment staging lists filled whiteboards with detailed annotations. Sarah entered to find the entire unit assembled, operators checking gear and reviewing their assigned tasks. Hayes stood at the center of it all, coordinating the final pieces. "Charlie Squad, you're with me for final walkthrough. Bravo and Alpha, continue equipment prep. We will's up at 0400 tomorrow." Sarah joined Charlie Squad near the back corner where a scale model of the target compound had been constructed. The detail was impressive. Every building and wall section represented accurately. The water tower stood prominently in the center. Rodriguez, Charlie Squad's leader, gestured to the model. "Chun, you'll be here." He pointed to a ridge line 420 meters north of the compound. "Your primary target is the tower observer. Secondary targets are any hostiles that emerge from the main building during the breach." "What's the time window?" Sarah asked. 30 seconds from when Bravo initiates movement. They'll start their approach to the wall at exactly 0315. You need that tower clear before 0316. Rodriguez traced the assault path with his finger. If the observer spots them during the climb, everything falls apart. They'll be completely exposed on that wall. Best case scenario, the mission fails. Worst case, we take casualties. Another Charlie Squad member, a compact operator named Kim, leaned forward. "What's your confidence level on a 400-meter shot in darkness?" "High," Sarah said simply. Kim exchanged glances with Rodriguez. "That's a challenging shot, even in daylight. At night, with wind, with pressure, it's a completely different situation." "I understand the difficulty." Rodriguez straightened. "Hayes wouldn't have assigned you if he didn't think you could make it. But understand, we're all counting on that shot." He moved to another section of the model. "After you neutralize the tower, shift to Overwatch. Cover the courtyard and main building entrance. Anyone who comes out is a threat." The walkthrough continued for another hour. Every squad reviewed their movements, their timing, their contingencies. Sarah paid particular attention to how Bravo Squad would approach the wall, the exact angles they'd use for climbing, the vulnerable moments when they'd be most exposed. Dalton approached her after the walkthrough concluded. "You seem calm for someone with this much riding on their first real operation." Nerves don't help accuracy, Sarah replied. True enough. Dalton studied her for a moment. Look, I've been skeptical about you since you arrived. Still am, to some degree. But Hayes trusts his instincts, and his instincts say you can handle this. Don't prove him wrong. I won't. Good. Because if this goes sideways because of a missed shot, you'll have to live with that. We all will. He walked away before Sarah could respond. The weight of his words settled over her like a physical thing. She'd carried operational responsibility before, countless times, but never while concealing her experience. The usual confidence that came from known capability was replaced by something more complex, the need to perform without revealing just how prepared she actually was. The afternoon brought equipment staging. Sarah drew her designated rifle, a precision weapon she'd zeroed the previous day. She performed function checks 3 times, verified her optic mounting, and test-fired 20 rounds to confirm zero. Every shot landed within a 2-inch circle at 100 meters. Torres watched from the range tower. When she finished, he descended and approached her station. That's good shooting, he said. Real-world conditions will be different, though. Adrenaline, darkness, time pressure. All of it affects accuracy. I've accounted for those variables. Have you? Torres crossed his arms. Because from where I stand, you're about to take the most important shot of your career based on training range performance. That's a significant leap. The shot is achievable, Sarah said. I'll make it. Confidence is good. Overconfidence gets people killed. Torres picked up one of her spent casings and examined it. I've seen skilled shooters fall apart under operational pressure. The technical ability is there, but the mental game is different when lives are on the line. I understand that. Do you, though? He dropped the casing. We'll find out tomorrow. Evening brought final briefings. The entire unit gathered in the operations center one last time. Hayes reviewed the mission from start to finish, emphasizing critical timings and decision points. When he reached the discussion of the tower, he looked directly at Sarah. Lieutenant Chun will eliminate the tower threat at 03:15 hours. This enables Bravo Squad's approach and establishes overwatch for the assault. He paused. There is no backup plan for this shot. It either happens or the entire operation is compromised. Questions. No one spoke. The silence carried its own weight. Good. Final equipment checks at 2200. Sleep if you can. We move at 0400. Dismissed. Operators filed out slowly, their conversations muted. Sarah returned to her quarters and laid out her gear methodically. Rifle, ammunition, communications equipment, night vision, survival kit. Everything had its place, everything was checked twice. She tried to sleep, but found her mind running through calculations. Wind, speed estimates, elevation adjustments, timing sequences. At midnight, she gave up and went to the range. The night air was cold and still. She dry, fire practice shots, working through her breathing rhythm, feeling the trigger break point over and over. Couldn't sleep either, a voice said behind her. Sarah turned to find Kim approaching. He carried his own rifle and settled onto the platform beside her. This your first direct action operation? He asked. First with this unit. Kim nodded. I've been with Charlie Squad for 2 years. Done maybe 15 operations. Still get nervous before each one. He loaded a magazine and chamber round. Nerves are normal. Anyone who says they don't feel them is either lying or dangerous. How do you manage it? Focus on the task. Break everything down into simple steps. Don't think about what happens if you fail. Just execute what you train to do. Kim aimed downrange at a barely visible target. Tomorrow, you've got one job. Put a round through a target at 420 meters. That's it. Everything else is someone else's responsibility. Simple as that. Simple as that. Kim fired a shot. The target pinged in the darkness. He safed his weapon and stood. Get some rest, Chun. Tomorrow's going to be a long day. Sarah remained at the range for another 30 minutes, then returned to her quarters. This time, sleep came easier. She dreamed of long-distance shots, of wind and elevation and trigger press, all of it flowing together in the practice sequence she'd executed thousands of times before. The alarm sounded at 0300. Sarah dressed quickly, gathered her gear, and made her way to the staging area. The compound was alive with quiet activity, operators moving with purpose through the darkness. Vehicles idled near the motor pool, their engines rumbling softly. Charlie's squad assembled near the lead vehicle. Rodriguez performed a final communications check, cycling through each operator's radio. Sarah's worked perfectly. They loaded equipment and climbed aboard. The drive took 40 minutes across rough terrain. No one spoke much. Sarah watched through the window as the landscape shifted from base buildings to open desert to the rocky outcroppings that surrounded the target area. They dismounted a kilometer from the compound and moved on foot. Sarah carried her rifle at low ready, following Rodriguez through the darkness. The terrain was exactly as the satellite imagery had shown, which made navigation straightforward even without much ambient light. Rodriguez stopped at the designated position. Chun, this is your spot. You got 30 minutes to set up and verify your sight picture. Kim will be your spotter. Sarah and Kim separated from the main group and moved to the ridgeline. The compound was visible in the distance, a collection of dark shapes against the slightly lighter desert floor. The water tower rose above everything else, exactly where intelligence had indicated. Sarah established her shooting position, adjusting rocks to create a stable base. Kim set up beside her with a spotting scope. Together, they ranged the tower. 423 meters, slight upward angle. Wind, Kim said quietly, checking his indicators. 3 to 5 miles per hour, left to right. Sarah made adjustments to her scope. The tower came into sharp focus through her optic. At the top, barely visible in the darkness, was a figure. The observer, exactly as predicted. Target confirmed. Sarah whispered into her radio. Rodriguez's voice came back. Copy. Bravo squad, moving into position. You're cleared hot in 15 minutes. Sarah settled into her position and began her final preparations. Breathing rhythm, trigger finger placement, natural point of aim. Everything aligned. Beside her, Kim monitored the tower through his scope. 10 minutes, he said softly. Sarah's heartbeat slowed. The world narrowed to the view through her optic, the crosshairs centered on the distant figure. 423 meters. Wind left to right. Slight upward angle. Every variable calculated and accounted for. 5 minutes. The figure in the tower shifted position, scanning the perimeter with what appeared to be binoculars. Unaware. Unprepared. Sarah's finger found the trigger. 2 minutes. The desert was silent, except for the whisper of wind across rock. Sarah's breathing steadied into the final rhythm. In and out, slow and controlled. Her crosshairs tracked the target with minute precision. 1 minute. The radio crackled softly. Bravo moving. Torres's voice, calm and professional. Time on target. Sarah's world collapsed to a single point of focus. The figure in the tower. The crosshairs. The trigger. She exhaled slowly, found a natural pause between breaths, and pressed. The rifle recoiled against Sarah's shoulder. Through her scope, she watched the figure in the tower collapse. Clean hit, center mass. The target disappeared from view. Target down, Kim confirmed through his spotting scope. Sarah cycled the bolt and kept her crosshairs on the tower. No movement, no alarm. The compound remained dark and quiet. Good hit. Rodriguez's voice came through the radio. Bravo is moving. Sarah shifted her aim to cover the assault team's approach. Through her optic, she could see dark figures emerging from cover and flowing toward the compound wall. They moved fast, using the shadows effectively. Torres led the formation, his team stacked tight behind him. While in 30 seconds, Torres transmitted. Sarah tracked them with her scope, ready to engage any threat that emerged. The courtyard remained empty. The buildings showed no signs of alert. The tower shot had been silent enough not to wake the compound. Bravo at the wall, Torres said. Starting climb. The operators ascended quickly, using climbing gear to scale the 8-foot barrier. Sarah watched 3 figures reach the top and drop down on the other side. Then 3 more. The entire squad made it over in less than a minute. Bravo inside the wire, Torres reported. Moving to main building. Charlie's squad began their own movement, advancing to secondary positions around the compound perimeter. Rodriguez and Kim shifted right to cover the vehicle entrance. Sarah maintained her position on the ridge, her scopes sweeping methodically across potential threat areas. The main building's door exploded inward. Flashbang grenades detonated inside, their light visible even from Sarah's distance. Then came the distinct sound of gunfire, muffled by walls but unmistakable. "Contact," Torres transmitted. "Multiple hostiles, first floor." Sarah's crosshairs tracked the building's windows. A figure appeared in one, silhouetted against interior light. She fired. The figure dropped. Another appeared at a different window. She fired again. 2 shots, 2 hits. "Nice shooting," Kim said beside her. The firefight inside intensified. More gunfire, more shouting in a language Sarah didn't recognize. Then Alpha Squad's voice came through the radio. "Alpha moving to reinforce. We've got runners from a north building." Sarah pivoted her aim to cover the northern structure. 3 figures emerged, running toward the main building with weapons raised. She engaged the lead runner. He went down hard. The other 2 scattered, seeking cover behind a vehicle in the courtyard. 2 hostiles behind the technical, Sarah transmitted. "Charlie copies," Rodriguez responded. "Engaging." Gunfire erupted from Charlie Squad's position. The vehicle's windows shattered. 1 hostile fell. The other retreated toward the north building, firing blindly as he ran. Sarah led the target, adjusted for his speed, and fired. The hostiles stumbled and dropped 20 meters from the building entrance. "North courtyard clear," she reported. The main building firefight was winding down. Torres transmitted updates as his team cleared room by room. "Hostile down, first floor east. Hostile down, hallway. Friendly secured, second floor." Minutes stretched as the operation progressed. Sarah maintained overwatch, her scope constantly moving between potential threat areas. The compound was larger than it appeared in satellite imagery, with more angles and more hiding spots than anticipated. "Bravo has the package," Torres finally transmitted. "High-value target secured. Beginning exfil. Alpha copies, moving to support. Charlie copies, holding perimeter." The assault teams began their withdrawal, moving back toward the wall with their capture target. Sarah watched their progress, ready to provide covering fire if needed. The compound appeared clear now, bodies visible in the courtyard and buildings, but no remaining active threats. "Movement, east wall," Kim said suddenly. "I've got someone on the roof." Sarah swung her scope to the eastern building. A figure crouched there, setting up what looked like a rocket-propelled grenade launcher. The weapon's distinctive shape was unmistakable even in darkness. "RPG on the east roof," Sarah transmitted urgently. "Engaging." She fired without hesitation. The figure jerked and fell backward, the launcher clattering onto the roof. Sarah fired again to ensure the threat was eliminated. "Threat neutralized," she reported. "RPG is down." "Good catch, Chun," Hayes' voice came through. That could have been catastrophic. The teams continued their withdrawal. Bravo Squad reached the wall and began climbing back over. Alpha Squad provided security, while Charlie Squad prepared to collapse their perimeter positions. "All elements, prepare for extract," Hayes transmitted. "Vehicles inbound, 2 minutes." Sarah maintained her position until the last operator was over the wall and moving toward the extraction point. Only then did she and Kim begin their own withdrawal, moving quickly down the ridge toward the rally point. The vehicles appeared exactly on schedule, their engines loud in the desert silence. Operators loaded rapidly, equipment and the captured high-value targets secured in the lead vehicle. Sarah climbed into the second truck with Charlie Squad. The convoy moved fast, putting distance between themselves and the compound. Inside the vehicle, operators began reloading magazines and conducting quick equipment checks. Rodriguez sat across from Sarah, his expression tired but satisfied. "That tower shot was critical," he said. "Without it, Bravo would have been compromised before they even reached the wall." "Just doing my job." Kim leaned forward. 8 confirmed hits from 400-plus meters in darkness. "That's exceptional shooting, Chun. Where did you train?" Sarah hesitated. Various advanced courses. Rodriguez studied her. You're being deliberately vague about your background. Why is that? Before Sarah could answer, the radio crackled with Hayes's voice. All elements. We're clear of the danger area. Good work tonight. Minimal friendly casualties. Target secured. Mission accomplished. The vehicle relaxed slightly at that news. Operators began talking more freely, recounting specific moments from the operation. Torres's voice came through from the lead vehicle. Hey Chun, that RPG shot saved lives. You were tracking threats I didn't even see from ground level. Copy that, Sarah replied simply. The drive back to base took longer than the inbound journey, the vehicles maintaining tactical spacing and varying their route. Dawn broke as they approached the compound, orange lights spreading across the desert landscape. They arrived to find the operations center prepared for debriefing. Operators filed in, exhausted but focused. Hayes stood at the front with detailed maps already displayed. Before we break down the operation, I want to acknowledge Lieutenant Chen's performance. Hayes began. 8 confirmed hostile eliminations from long range, including the critical tower shot that enabled our entire assault. He looked directly at Sarah. That's exceptional work under pressure. The room was quiet for a moment. Then several operators nodded or murmured agreement. Torres stood from his seat. I was wrong about you, he said bluntly. I questioned whether you could handle the pressure. You answered that question definitively tonight. Dalton raised his hand slightly. Agreed. Those weren't lucky shots. That was skill and composure. He paused. Which makes me wonder what else you're not telling us about your background. Sarah felt the attention of the entire room focused on her. Hayes raised an eyebrow, clearly interested in her response. I've had good training, Sarah said carefully. Tonight was about applying it effectively. That's not really an answer, Rodriguez pointed out. Advanced marksmanship, tactical awareness, situational control under fire. That's not standard infantry officer training. Hayes stepped forward. Gentlemen, Lieutenant Chen's performance speaks for itself. Whatever training she's received, it's proven effective. He glanced at Sarah with an expression that suggested he had questions of his own. We can discuss specifics later. For now, let's complete this debriefing. The meeting continued for another hour, analyzing each phase of the operation. Sarah contributed when asked but volunteered little. She could feel the shift in how the team viewed her, skepticism replaced by curiosity and respect. When the debriefing finally concluded, operators filed out slowly. Several stopped to acknowledge Sarah's shooting, offering brief compliments or nods of approval. Torres approached her near the door. Look, I don't know your full story, and maybe it's not my business, he said. But tonight you performed like someone with a lot more experience than your file suggests. That's worth acknowledging. Thank you. He started to leave, then turned back. We're running advanced tactical training next week. Urban environment, complex scenarios. I'd like you on my squad if you're interested. I'm interested. Good. Torres extended his hand. Welcome to the team, Chun. Really welcome this time. Sarah shook his hand firmly. The gesture felt significant, a barrier crossed. She'd proven herself operationally, but questions remained about her background. Questions that would only grow more difficult to avoid as her capabilities became increasingly apparent. She left the operations center and walked across the compound toward her quarters. The morning sun was fully up now, warming the air rapidly. Other operators moved about their duties, several nodding to her as she passed. Inside her room, Sarah finally allowed herself to relax slightly. The operation had been successful. Her shooting had been critical. The team's respect had been earned through demonstrated performance rather than disclosed credentials. But the questions were coming. Torres, Dalton, Rodriguez, even Hayes, they all recognized that something didn't add up. A support officer, with her level of capability, raised obvious questions. How long could she maintain the facade before someone connected the pieces? Sarah sat on her bunk and began cleaning her rifle. The familiar ritual helped her think. She'd chosen this path, this fresh start. Now she had to navigate the consequences of proving herself while concealing the full truth. Outside, the compound continued its daily rhythm. Training would resume tomorrow. More operations would follow. And with each demonstration of capability, The questions would become more pointed, the curiosity more intense. Sarah finished cleaning her weapon and secure it properly. For now, she'd earned her place through action. The rest would reveal itself in time, on whatever timeline the truth ultimately demanded. The next 3 days passed in a blur of routine. Equipment maintenance, physical training, tactical reviews. Sarah settled into the unit's rhythm, no longer the outsider, but not quite fully integrated either. The operators treated her with professional respect, but curious glances followed her movements across the compound. Hayes called her to his office on the 4th morning. She arrived to find him reviewing personnel files, several spread across his desk. He gestured for her to sit without looking up. "I've been trying to access your complete service record," he said finally. "Most of it is classified above my clearance level. That's unusual for an infantry officer. My previous assignments required operational security, sir." Hayes closed the file he'd been reading. "Lieutenant, I'm not trying to breach protocol, but when an operator performs the way you did on that raid, it raises questions. 8 long-range eliminations in darkness, tactical awareness that exceeds standard training, composure under pressure that suggests significant experience. I've had good instructors." "That's what you keep saying." Hayes leaned back in his chair. "But good instructors don't explain what I saw. You weren't learning on that operation. You were executing at an expert level." He paused. "I need to know if there's something about your background that affects how I deploy you going forward." Sarah chose her words carefully. "My previous work was with specialized units. The details are classified, but the training was comprehensive." "How comprehensive?" "Extensive close-quarters combat, advanced marksmanship, unconventional warfare tactics, small unit leadership in high-risk environments." Hayes studied her face. "That sounds like special operations training." "I can't discuss specifics, sir." "Can't or won't?" "Both." The silence stretched between them. Hayes finally nodded slowly. "All right, I'll respect the classification. But understand, the team is going to keep asking questions. They've earned the right to know who they're operating with." "I understand." "Good. Dismissed." Sarah left the office feeling the weight of the conversation. Hayes was probing, carefully but persistently. The successful mission had bought her credibility, but also intensified scrutiny. She couldn't avoid the questions forever. The afternoon brought training at the shoot house. Torres ran the squad through dynamic entry drills, pushing speed and accuracy. Sarah performed well, her movements efficient and controlled. During a water break, Rodriguez approached. "You flow through rooms like someone who's done this 1,000 times, he said. "Most officers have rigid movement patterns from standardized training. You adapt instinctively. Repetition builds muscle memory." "How many repetitions are we talking about?" Rodriguez drank from his water bottle. "Hundreds? Thousands?" "Enough to be comfortable." Rodriguez smiled slightly. "You're good at deflecting questions. That's a skill too, I suppose." The training continued until evening. Sarah cleaned her weapon in the armory alongside other operators. Dalton worked at the bench across from her, methodically disassembling his rifle. "Torres wants you on his squad permanently," Dalton said without looking up. "He's impressed with your performance. So is Hayes, though he won't say it directly." "I appreciate the confidence." "It's earned confidence." Dalton glanced at her. "But there's something you should know. Word gets around in the special operations community. People talk. Someone's going to recognize you eventually, whatever you're trying to keep quiet." Sarah continued cleaning her weapon, her hands steady. "I'm not hiding anything improper. Didn't say you were." Dalton reassembled his bolt carrier group, just pointing out that secrets have a shelf life, especially in a community this small. 2 days later, the unit received orders for another operation. This time, a time-sensitive raid on a compound suspected of housing enemy leadership. The planning phase moved quickly, with Hayes driving an aggressive timeline. Sarah attended the initial briefing with the rest of the unit. The target was more complex than the previous operation, multiple buildings in an urban environment with significant civilian population nearby. Hayes outlined the approach using detailed imagery. "This one requires precision," he said. "We can't afford collateral damage with civilians in proximity. Rules of engagement are strict. Positive identification required before engaging any target. Torres stood and pointed to the main building. Entry points here and here. We'll split into two elements, simultaneously breach to prevent squirters. Alpha takes north, Bravo takes south. Charlie provides outer perimeter security. What about Overwatch? Kim asked. Hayes looked at Sarah. Lieutenant Shun will establish an elevated position here. He indicated a building adjacent to the target. 4-story structure, rooftop access. You'll have clear sight lines to all entry points and potential escape routes. Understood, sir. The briefing continued with detailed planning. Timing, communications protocols, casualty evacuation procedures. The operation was scheduled for 72 hours out, which meant intensive preparation starting immediately. Sarah spent the next day rehearsing movements on a mock-up of the target compound. The unit ran through the entire sequence 8 times, refining approaches and contingencies. Her Overwatch position offered good visibility but limited angles on some areas, which required careful coordination with ground elements. On the second day, an unexpected development. During the afternoon briefing, Hayes announced a change. We've received intelligence that the target has enhanced security. At least 20 armed personnel, possibly more. He updated the display to show new defensive positions. This changes our risk calculation significantly. Torres frowned. 20 hostiles in that environment with civilians nearby. That's a complex tactical problem. Agreed. Hayes looked around the room, which is why I'm requesting additional support assets. We'll have air cover on standby and a quick reaction force staged nearby. The room absorbed this information quietly. Enhanced security meant higher risk, more potential for things going wrong. Sarah studied the updated imagery, noting the new defensive positions and calculating sightlines from her Overwatch location. Chun, Hayes said, your role becomes more critical with this change. You'll need to identify and engage priority threats before the assault teams enter. That means making judgment calls on hostile versus civilian in a complex environment. I can handle it, sir. I know you can. The question is how many targets you can service before the entry teams are committed. Hayes zoomed in on the compound. We need at least 3 security positions neutralized in the first 30 seconds. Can you do that? Yes, sir. The briefing concluded with renewed intensity. Operators broke into squad groups to refine their specific roles. Sarah remained behind, studying the imagery in detail. 3 targets in 30 seconds from an elevated position with civilians nearby. Challenging, but achievable. Dalton approached as she worked through calculations. That's a significant responsibility, he said. 3 precision shots in rapid succession. Positive identification required for each. There's no margin for error. I understand the stakes. Do you? Dalton pulled up a chair. Because if you misidentify a civilian as a hostile, or if you miss a security position and someone gets through to alert the compound, people die. Our people. Sarah met his gaze directly. I won't miss. And I won't misidentify targets. That's a bold statement. It's an accurate statement. Dalton studied her for a long moment. You know what I think? I think you've done this exact type of operation before. Multiple times. Your confidence isn't bravado, it's experience. Sarah didn't respond. Dalton leaned back in his chair. Whoever you were before you got here, whatever unit you came from, it was something significant. He stood. I'm not going to push for details. But I want you to know that whatever you're protecting, it's safe with this team. We take care of our own. He left before Sarah could reply. She returned her attention to the imagery, but his words lingered. The team was closing in on the truth, piece by piece. Her performance kept revealing capabilities that couldn't be easily explained away. That evening, Sarah conducted a final equipment check. Her rifle was zeroed perfectly. Her optic was calibrated for the expected engagement distances. Her ammunition was match grade, selected for consistency and accuracy. Everything was ready. Rodriguez found her at the range just after sunset. Tomorrow's the real test, he said. 3 targets, 30 seconds, civilians present. That's the kind of shooting that defines careers. Or ends them. Rodriguez smiled grimly. True enough, but I've seen you shoot. If anyone on this team can pull it off, it's you. Appreciate the vote of confidence. It's not just confidence. It's recognition. Rodriguez moved closer, his voice dropping slightly. I've worked with shooters from every Tier 1 unit in the military. Your skill set matches theirs. Maybe exceeds some of them. Sarah said nothing. Rodriguez nodded as if she'd confirmed something. Thought so. Don't worry, I'm not going to ask questions you can't answer. Just know that whatever brought you here, you found the right team. He walked away into the darkness. Sarah remained at the range, looking out over the compound. The lights flickered on across the base as night settled in. Tomorrow would bring another proving moment, another test of capability, another step closer to the truth being revealed. She headed back to her quarters and forced herself to sleep. The operation would demand peak performance. Questions about her background would have to wait. For now, all that mattered was the mission and the 3 targets she needed to eliminate in 30 seconds to keep her team alive. The helicopters lifted off at 0300 hours, their rotors cutting through the darkness. Sarah sat near the door of the lead aircraft, her rifle secured between her knees. Across from her, Torres checked his squad's equipment one final time. The cabin was loud with engine noise, making conversation impossible. They flew low over the terrain, following valleys and ridgelines to avoid detection. Through the open door, Sarah watched the landscape blur past in shades of gray and black. The night vision on her helmet turned the world into a green-tinted dreamscape. 5 minutes out, the crew chief signaled. Operators began final checks, tightening straps, and verifying weapons were ready. Sarah felt the familiar pre-operation focus settle over her, everything else falling away except the mission ahead. The helicopters flared and touched down in a field 2 kilometers from the target. Teams flowed out quickly, establishing security as the aircraft lifted off and disappeared into the darkness. The sudden quiet was almost jarring after the sustained rotor noise. All elements, move to your positions, Hayes transmitted. We execute in 20 minutes. Sarah moved with Charlie's squad toward the adjacent building that would serve as her overwatch position. The urban environment was more complex than the desert compound, with narrow streets and multi-story structures creating dozens of potential threat angles. Rodriguez led them through back alleys, avoiding main thoroughfares. They reached the target building without incident. Rodriguez and Kim secured the ground floor, while Sarah ascended the internal stairwell. For floors up, she emerged onto the rooftop. The target compound was visible 300 meters away, its buildings outlined against the night sky. Overwatch in position, Sarah transmitted. Establishing sight picture now. She set up her rifle along the rooftop's edge, using sandbags she'd carried up to create a stable shooting platform. Through her scope, the compound came into sharp focus. 3 security positions were visible, exactly where intelligence had indicated. 2 guards at the main entrance, 1 on a second-floor balcony, and 1 patrolling the courtyard. I count 4 security positions, not 3, Sarah transmitted. Additional hostile in the courtyard, moving patrol pattern. Hayes responded immediately. Can you service all 4 in 30 seconds? Sarah tracked the courtyard patrol through her scope. His pattern was predictable, about 45 seconds per circuit. If I time it with his position near the south wall. Yes. Understood. You're cleared to engage when ready. Bravo and Alpha will initiate movement on your first shot. Copy that. Sarah settled into her position and began her mental checklist. The entrance guards were stationary, easy targets. The balcony guard had partial cover but was exposed enough. The courtyard patrol was the variable, requiring precise timing to catch him in the optimal location. She watched the patrol complete 1 full circuit, timing his movement. 43 seconds. His path took him past the south wall, where he paused briefly to light a cigarette before continuing. That pause was the window. All elements stand by, Sarah transmitted. Engaging in 60 seconds on my mark. The assault teams acknowledged. Sarah tracked the patrol guard as he began another circuit. Her crosshairs settled on the first entrance guard. Breathing slowed. Heartbeat steadied. The world narrowed to the view through her scope. The patrol guard reached the south wall and stopped. Sarah's finger found the trigger. Engaging now. The first shot dropped the right entrance guard. Sarah cycled the bolt and shifted to the left entrance guard. Second shot. He fell. Shift to balcony. Third shot. The guard there collapsed over the railing. Shift to courtyard. The patrol guard was turning, alerted by his falling comrades. Fourth shot caught him center mass as he reached for his radio. For targets down, Sarah transmitted. 22 seconds. Bravo moving, Torres responded. Alpha moving. Through her scope, Sarah watched the assault teams flow toward the compound. They reached the entrance quickly, stacking on either side of the door. Torres placed a breaching charge while his team prepared for entry. The door exploded inward. Flashbangs detonated inside, their distinctive sound carrying across the distance. Then gunfire erupted, multiple weapons firing in rapid succession. Contact, Torres transmitted. Heavy resistance, first floor. Sarah scanned for targets through her scope. A figure appeared at a second-floor window, weapon raised toward the street below. She fired. The figure dropped back inside. Another appeared at a different window. She fired again. 2 hostiles down, second floor west side, she reported. The firefight intensified. More gunfire from inside the compound, shouting in multiple languages, the crash of furniture being overturned. Alpha Squad breached their entry point on the north side, adding to the chaos. Alpha taking fire from the stairwell. Alpha team leader transmitted. Multiple hostiles, second floor. Sarah shifted her aim to cover the northern approach. Through a window, she could see movement on the interior stairs. She tracked a figure descending with a weapon. The angle was difficult, partially obscured by the window frame. She adjusted her aim point and fired. The glass shattered and the hostile tumbled down the stairs. Stairwell clear, she transmitted. Good shooting, the Alpha team leader responded. Moving on the roof, Kim's voice came through suddenly. Chun, you got hostiles coming up behind your position. Sarah spun around to see 2 figures emerging from the stairwell she'd used earlier. They hadn't spotted her yet, focused on reaching the rooftop edge to fire down at the assault teams below. She transitioned from her precision rifle to her sidearm in one smooth motion. 2 shots, both targets down before they could acquire her position. She keyed her radio. Rooftop secure. 2 hostiles eliminated. Charlie moving to support, Rodriguez transmitted. Sarah returned to her rifle and resumed overwatch of the compound. The firefight was winding down, the volume of gunfire decreasing as rooms were cleared. Torres transmitted updates as Bravo Squad advanced through the building. First floor secure. Moving to second floor. Alpha has the north wing secure. Sarah maintained her scan, looking for any remaining threats. A figure appeared at a rear exit, attempting to flee. She engaged, dropping him before he cleared the doorway. Another appeared on a third-floor balcony with what looked like an RPG. She fired twice, ensuring the threat was eliminated. Package located, Torres transmitted. We have eyes on the target. Securing now. All elements, prepare for exfil, Hayes ordered. Air support inbound in 3 minutes. Sarah began packing her equipment, maintaining situational awareness as she worked. The compound was secure, the target captured, the mission successful. But the intensity of the engagement had been significant, far more resistance than anticipated. Overwatch, what's your total count? Hayes asked. Sarah did the mental calculation. 9 confirmed eliminations, sir. 4 security positions on initial contact, 2 second floor, 1 stairwell, 2 on my position. Outstanding work, Hayes responded. That's direct action capability at the highest level. The assault teams began their withdrawal, moving the captured target toward the extraction point. Sarah descended from her rooftop position and linked up with Charlie Squad. Rodriguez looked at her with an expression that mixed respect and amazement. 9 kills from Overwatch while simultaneously defending your own position, he said. That's exceptional even by our standards. Just doing my job. That's way beyond just doing your job, Kim added. You were making shots I couldn't have made, and I'm supposedly our squad expert marksman. They moved quickly toward the extraction point, following the assault teams. The helicopters appeared overhead, right on schedule, descending into the designated landing zone. Teams loaded rapidly, the captured target secured in the center of the formation. Sarah climbed aboard the same aircraft as Torres and his squad. As the helicopter lifted off, Torres leaned close to speak over the rotor noise. That was the most impressive display of precision shooting I've ever witnessed in combat, he said directly into her ear. And I've worked with every special operations unit in the military. Whatever your background is, it's elite tier. Top tier. Sarah didn't respond, focusing instead on the compound falling away beneath them. But she knew Torres's assessment was correct. She'd operated at full capability tonight, responding to the intense engagement without holding back. The performance would raise even more questions, make the truth even harder to conceal. The flight back to base took 30 minutes. Sarah used the time to mentally replay the engagement, analyzing her performance and noting lessons learned. 9 eliminations, 0 friendly casualties in her sector, mission successful. By any standard, it was an exceptional outcome. They landed as dawn broke over the compound. Operators filed off the helicopters, exhausted but energized by the successful mission. Hayes waited near the operations center, already reviewing initial reports. Lieutenant Shun, a word, he called as Sarah walked past. She approached, setting down her equipment bag. Hayes studied her with an intensity that suggested he'd reached some conclusions. 9 eliminations from an overwatch position in a complex urban environment, he said quietly. Split-second target discrimination with civilians nearby. Defensive shooting while maintaining your primary mission. He paused. That's not advanced infantry training. That's not even standard special operations capability. Sarah met his gaze steadily, but said nothing. I'm going to make some calls, Hayes continued, to some people who might be able to access your classified records. Because what I saw tonight tells me there's a significant piece of your background we don't know about. He stepped closer. And if you're who I think you might be, then we've been drastically underutilizing your capabilities. I can explain, sir. Not here. Hayes glanced around at the other operators nearby. My office, 1 hour. Bring whatever documentation you're authorized to share. Understood, sir. Hayes walked away toward the operations center. Sarah picked up her equipment and headed for her quarters. The moment she'd been anticipating was here. Hayes had enough information to piece together the truth, and he had the contacts to confirm it. Within hours, possibly minutes, her cover would be completely blown. She entered her quarters and pulled out a locked case from beneath her bunk. Inside were documents she'd been authorized to carry, but hadn't yet needed. Service records, commendations, qualification certificates. All of them marked with the same insignia, the one she'd been avoiding revealing. The Trident, the Naval Special Warfare insignia, the mark of a Navy SEAL. Sarah sat on her bunk and stared at the documents. 8 years of SEAL operations, multiple combat deployments, classified missions across 3 continents. A service record that explained every capability she'd demonstrated over the past weeks. In 1 hour, she'd walk into Hayes' office and end the charade. The team would know the truth. The questions would finally have answers. And everything would change. Sarah showered and changed into a clean uniform, then gathered the documents from the locked case. She checked the time. 45 minutes until her meeting with Hayes. Enough time to prepare what she would say, how she would explain the decision to conceal her background. A knock on her door interrupted her thoughts. She opened it to find Dalton standing there, his expression serious. "Can we talk?" he asked. "Of course." Sarah stepped aside to let him enter. Dalton closed the door behind him and leaned against the wall. "I've been in special operations for 12 years. Worked alongside every elite unit in the military. DevGru, Delta, Special Forces, Marine Raiders." He crossed his arms. "Your performance tonight matched the best shooters I've ever seen from those units. Actually exceeded most of them." Sarah remained silent, waiting. "So I made a call to a friend at Naval Special Warfare Command," Dalton continued. "Asked if they had any female operators who might have been reassigned recently." He pulled out his phone and showed her a message. "He sent me a name. Lieutenant Sarah Chun, SEAL Team 3, 8 years operational experience, multiple combat deployments, decorated for valor. The silence stretched between them. Sarah finally nodded slowly. That's you, isn't it? Yes. Dalton put his phone away. Why hide it? SEAL credentials would have given you instant credibility here. Instead, you showed up and let everyone treat you like an inexperienced support officer. Sarah moved to sit on her bunk. I wanted to prove myself on capability alone, not on reputation. Too many times I've walked into situations where people either immediately doubted me or immediately deferred to the SEAL background without seeing what I could actually do. So you started from scratch. Essentially, let the team form their own opinions based on performance rather than preconceptions. Dalton considered this. That's either incredibly humble or incredibly prideful. I can't decide which. Maybe both. Hayes knows, doesn't he? That's why he called you in. He suspects. I'm supposed to meet with him in 30 minutes with documentation. Dalton pushed off the wall. The team is going to have questions. Some might feel misled, like you weren't being honest with them. I know. Sarah looked at the documents spread on her bunk. I accepted that risk when I made the decision. Well, for what it's worth, I respect what you did. You earned your place here through demonstrated ability, not borrowed credibility. That matters. Dalton moved toward the door. Good luck with Hayes. I'll let you prepare. He left, closing the door quietly behind him. Sarah returned to organizing her documentation, but her mind was elsewhere. Dalton's reaction had been surprisingly understanding, but not everyone would respond the same way. Torres might feel betrayed. Rodriguez might question her motives. The dynamic she'd worked so hard to build was about to shift completely. 20 minutes later, she walked across the compound toward Hayes' office. The morning sun was fully up now, heating the air rapidly. Operators moved about their duties, several nodding to her as she passed. They had no idea yet that the lieutenant they just operated with was actually one of the Navy's elite special operators. Hayes' door was open. He sat behind his desk reviewing what appeared to be service records. He looked up as Sarah knocked on the doorframe. Come in, Lieutenant. Close the door. Sarah entered and shut the door behind her. She stood at attention, the folder of documents held at her side. At ease, Hayes said. Sit down. Sarah took the chair across from him and placed her folder on the desk. Hayes glanced at it but didn't immediately reach for it. I made several calls this morning, he began, to people at Naval Special Warfare Command, to colleagues who've worked with SEAL teams, to sources I trust. He leaned forward. They all told me the same thing. Lieutenant Sarachun is one of the most capable operators to come through the SEAL pipeline in the last decade. Multiple deployments, classified operations, commendations for actions that can't be publicly disclosed. Yes, sir. So why the hell did you show up here pretending to be a standard infantry officer? I wasn't pretending, sir. I'm an infantry officer. I also happen to be a SEAL. Don't play semantic games with me. Hayes' voice carried an edge now. You deliberately concealed your background. Let my team question your capabilities and put yourself through evaluations you were massively overqualified for. Why? Sarah opened her folder and pulled out her service record. Because everywhere I go, the SEAL background defines how people see me before I've done anything. Some people immediately doubt a female SEAL's capability despite the record. Others defer to the reputation without seeing the actual person. I wanted to start fresh, prove myself on merit alone. Hayes took the service record and scanned through it. His expression shifted as he read, eyebrows rising at certain sections. 8 years, he said quietly. 3 combat deployments. Advanced sniper qualified, close quarters battle instructor certified, jump master. He looked up. You've trained people in the skills you've been demonstrating here. Yes, sir. This changes everything. Hayes set down the document. The missions I've been assigning you, they've been well below your capability level. You're qualified to lead assault elements, plan complex operations, train other operators. I understand, sir. Do you? Because right now I'm trying to decide if I should be impressed by your humility or concerned about your judgment. Hayes stood and walked to his window overlooking the compound. Concealing this kind of background from your unit commander creates operational issues. What if I'd assigned you to something that didn't utilize your capabilities properly? What if we needed your specialized skills and I didn't know they existed? Those are valid concerns, sir. Sarah remained seated, her posture relaxed but attentive. I accept responsibility for that risk, but I also believe the approach worked. The team respects me now based on what they've seen me do, not what a file says I can do. Hayes turned to face her. They're going to find out. Probably already have, knowing how fast information moves in this community. Dalton already knows. He made calls this morning. Of course he did. Hayes returned to his desk. All right, here's how this plays out. You're going to brief the unit this afternoon, full disclosure about your background. No more secrets. No more vague answers about your training. Understood, sir. And going forward, I'm reassigning you to direct action operations. You're too valuable as an operator to waste on support roles. Hayes pulled out a new folder. We have another mission developing, high-risk target. I want you leading one of the assault elements. Sir, I don't want special treatment because of my SEAL background. This isn't special treatment. It's proper utilization of available capabilities. Hayes met her gaze directly. You've proven you can perform at this level. Now I'm asking you to do it in a leadership capacity. Can you handle that? Yes, sir. Good. The briefing is at 1400 hours in the operations center. I'll introduce you. Then you explain your background and answer questions. Be prepared, because there will be a lot of questions. I'm ready, sir. Dismissed. Sarah stood, gathered her documents, and left the office. Outside, the compound continued its normal rhythm, but everything felt different now. In a few hours, the truth would be public knowledge. The team would know who she really was, what she'd really done. She walked toward the operations center to review the new mission parameters Hayes had mentioned. Torres stood near the entrance talking with Rodriguez and Kim. They looked up as she approached, their expressions curious. Chun, Torres called out. Got a minute? Sarah stopped. Sure. The three operators moved closer, forming a loose circle around her. Torres spoke first. Dalton said you had an interesting conversation with Hayes this morning. He crossed his arms. Want to share what that was about? Hayes is calling a unit briefing at 1400. I'll explain everything then. That's not really an answer, Rodriguez pointed out. We just conducted a high-risk operation together. I think we've earned some direct communication. Sarah looked at each of them, seeing the curiosity mixed with a hint of frustration. You're right. She took a breath. My full background is Naval Special Warfare. SEAL Team 3, 8 years operational. I was reassigned here under orders to integrate without disclosing my previous unit. The silence was immediate and heavy. Torres's arms uncrossed slowly. Kim's eyes widened. Rodriguez actually stepped back slightly. You're a SEAL, Torres said finally. An actual Navy SEAL. Yes. For 8 years. Yes. Rodriguez shook his head slowly. That explains everything. The shooting, the tactical awareness, the composure under fire. You weren't learning, you were operating at your train level. Why not just tell us from the start? Kim asked. Why let us doubt you? Sarah explained her reasoning, the same rationale she'd given Hayes and Dalton. When she finished, Torres was quiet for a long moment. That took guts, he said finally. Walking in here, knowing you'd be underestimated, proving yourself anyway. He extended his hand. I respect that. Sarah shook his hand firmly. Rodriguez and Kim followed suit, their initial shock transforming into something closer to respect. The afternoon briefing is going to be interesting, Rodriguez said. Half the unit probably suspects something by now, but confirmation is going to shift a lot of perspectives. How do you think they'll react? Sarah asked. Torres considered. Honestly, most will respect the capability you've demonstrated. Some might feel misled. A few might be intimidated. He shrugged. But you've proven yourself operationally. That counts for more than anything else in this community. They dispersed, leaving Sarah alone near the operations center entrance. She entered and found a quiet corner to review the mission parameters for the operation Hayes wanted her to lead. The target was complex, requiring coordination between multiple assault elements and precise timing. As she studied the details, she felt the weight of the upcoming briefing. In a few hours, everything would be out in the open. The secret that had defined her experience here for weeks would become common knowledge. The team's perception of her would shift, relationships would adjust, dynamics would change. But beneath the anxiety was something else. Relief. The exhaustion of maintaining the concealment was significant, more draining than she'd admitted to herself. Being able to operate openly, without hedging answers or deflecting questions, would be liberating. Sarah closed the mission file and checked the time. 1 hour until the briefing. 1 hour until the truth became official. She headed back to her quarters to prepare for what would likely be one of the most challenging conversations of her career. The operations center filled rapidly at 13:55. Operators filed in, taking seats or standing along the walls. The atmosphere was charged with curiosity, word having spread that something significant was about to be announced. Sarah stood near the front with Hayes, aware of dozens of eyes tracking her movements. At precisely 1400 hours, Hayes called the room to attention. The conversations stopped immediately, replaced by focused silence. "Gentlemen, we're here to discuss Lieutenant Chen's background and her operational assignment going forward." Hayes gestured towards Sarah. "What I'm about to share was classified until this morning, which is why you haven't heard it before. Lieutenant Chen has been operating under restricted disclosure protocols. Those restrictions have now been lifted." The room was absolutely still. Every operator focused completely on Hayes. Lieutenant Sarah Chen is an 8-year veteran of naval special warfare. She served with SEAL Team 3 across multiple combat deployments and conducted classified, direct action operations throughout the Middle East and Africa. Hayes pulled up her service record on the main display. She is advanced sniper qualified, close quarters battle instructor certified, and has more operational experience than most people in this room. The silence broke into surprised murmurs. Several operators leaned forward, studying the display more closely. Others looked at Sarah with expressions ranging from shock to understanding. She came to this unit under orders to integrate without initially disclosing her SEAL background. Hayes continued. That decision was made at command level for operational security reasons. However, given her demonstrated performance over the past weeks, maintaining that cover is no longer necessary or productive. Hayes stepped aside. "Lieutenant Chen will now answer your questions." Sarah moved to the front of the room. She could see the spectrum of reactions clearly now. Torres nodded slightly, supportive. Rodriguez smiled. Dalton's expression was neutral but not hostile. Others looked confused, processing the information. An operator near the back raised his hand. "Why hide it? Most people would lead with SEAL credentials, not conceal them." Sarah had prepared for this question. "I wanted to earn my place here based on capability, not reputation. Being a SEAL means people form opinions before seeing what you can actually do. Some doubt you because you're female. Others defer to the reputation without evaluating the person. I chose to prove myself through performance first." Another operator spoke up. "Did you think we couldn't handle knowing the truth? It wasn't about you handling it. It was about me having the opportunity to demonstrate competence before the background became the defining factor." Sarah looked around the room. "Every qualification I passed, every operation I participated in, those were evaluated on merit. That was valuable to me." Torres stood. "I was one of the skeptics when she arrived. I made assumptions based on her file and appearance." He looked at Sarah directly. "I was wrong. She proved her capability repeatedly before any of us knew her background. That matters." Several operators nodded agreement. An older operator near the front, a chief with multiple combat deployments visible in his decorations, raised his hand. "What was your primary role with the teams?" "Assault element leadership, precision marksmanship, high-value target operations. I also served as a close quarters battle instructor for 2 training cycles." The chief studied her. "That's a solid record. What brought you to this unit?" "I requested reassignment to broaden my operational experience beyond naval special warfare. This unit conducts different mission profiles with different tactical approaches." Sarah paused. "I wanted to continue growing as an operator." "Makes sense," the chief said. He looked at Hayes. "Sir, if she's instructor qualified, we could use her expertise in training rotations." "Noted," Hayes responded. "We'll be utilizing Lieutenant Chen's full skill set going forward." Kim stood from his seat. "I've been on Charlie Squad for 2 years. I thought I was our top marksman. He smiled slightly. Finding out I've been working alongside someone who's actually an advanced sniper explains a lot. No hard feelings, but I have questions about long-range shooting techniques. Happy to discuss it, Sarah replied. An operator Sarah didn't know well spoke up, his tone less friendly. Some of us have been competing for leadership positions. Now, suddenly someone shows up with secret SEAL credentials and gets moved to the front of the line. How is that fair? Hay stepped forward before Sarah could respond. Lieutenant Chun isn't getting special treatment. She's being assigned according to her qualifications and demonstrated performance. He fixed the operator with a direct look. Over the past weeks, she's consistently performed at expert level across multiple disciplines. That's not favoritism. That's proper personnel utilization. The operator didn't look completely satisfied, but sat back without further comment. Rodriguez raised his hand. Tactical question. You spotted that fourth security position on the last operation before anyone else saw it. Was that SEAL training or just good situational awareness? Combination of both. Advanced reconnaissance training emphasizes pattern recognition and threat assessment. But the fundamentals apply regardless of background. Sarah moved to the display showing the previous operation. I was looking for anomalies in the security setup. For positions instead of 3 changed the tactical problem, so I flagged it immediately. The briefing continued for 30 minutes, questions ranging from tactical to personal. Sarah answered each one directly, no longer hedging or deflecting. The relief of operating openly was immediate and significant. Finally, Hayes called an end to the questions. All right, that's enough for now. Lieutenant Chun will be available for follow-up discussions as needed. He brought up a new display. Now, onto operational matters. We have a developing mission that requires immediate planning. The unit's attention shifted to the new mission parameters. Sarah returned to her seat, feeling the weight of revelation lift from her shoulders. The truth was out. The team knew. Whatever came next would happen without the burden of concealment. After the briefing concluded, operators approached Sarah individually. Some offered congratulations, others asked technical questions, a few simply acknowledged the information with a nod. The atmosphere was generally positive, though Sarah noticed a handful of operators who seemed less enthusiastic. Torres pulled her aside near the exit. That went better than I expected. Most of the team respects what you did. The few who don't will come around once they see you operate in a leadership role. I hope so. They will. Torres glanced back at the operations center. Hayes mentioned a new mission. High-risk target, multiple assault elements. He wants you leading Bravo squad. Sarah felt the significance of that assignment. Bravo was Torres's squad, one of the most experienced units in the compound. I thought Bravo was your squad. It is. Torres smiled. I'll be leading Alpha. You're taking over Bravo for this operation. Consider it a field evaluation of your leadership capabilities. No pressure there. You've handled everything else we've thrown at you. This is just the next step. They walked across the compound together, discussing the preliminary mission details. Other operators joined the conversation, the dynamic already shifting to accommodate Sarah's revealed background. Questions were more direct now, discussions more technical, the mutual respect more explicit. That evening, Sarah attended the mission planning session with squad leaders. Hayes outlined the target, a fortified compound holding multiple high-value individuals. The operation would require simultaneous assaults on 3 separate buildings, with precise timing to prevent targets from escaping. Lieutenant Chun will lead Bravo squad on the primary building, Hayes said, indicating the main structure on the display. This is the most critical target. You'll have 6 operators, full kit, air support on standby. Sarah studied the building's layout. Entry points here and here. She indicated 2 locations. We'll split into 2 elements, breach simultaneously to prevent squirters from moving between floors. Torres leaned forward. What about the interior stairwell? That's a natural choke point. We clear it immediately after entry with the first element, while the second element secures the ground floor. Sarah traced the path on the display. Standard SEAL tactical package, modified for this specific structure. Hayes nodded approval. Solid approach. Work up the detailed plan with your squad tonight. We execute in 48 hours. The planning session continued until late evening. Sarah coordinated with Torres, Rodriguez, and the other squad leaders, integrating their approaches into a cohesive operation. The dynamics were different now, more collaborative, with her SEAL experience openly acknowledged and utilized. She returned to her quarters after midnight, exhausted but satisfied. The day had been transformative, revealing a truth that had been building toward disclosure since her arrival. The team's reaction had been generally positive, the professional respect earned through demonstrated capability carrying more weight than any initial skepticism about her concealed background. Sarah reviewed her mission notes one final time before sleeping. Leading Bravo Squad into a high-risk assault was exactly the kind of challenge she'd sought when requesting reassignment. The operation would test her leadership in this unit's specific tactical framework, different from SEAL operations, but leveraging the same fundamental skills. Her phone buzzed with a message from Hayes. "Good briefing today." Team responded well. "Looking forward to seeing you lead Bravo on this operation. Don't overthink it. You've done this before." Sarah typed a response. "Thank you, sir. Won't let the team down." She set the phone aside and lay back on her bunk. Tomorrow would bring detailed planning and squad integration. The day after, the operation itself. 2 days to prove that her SEAL background translated effectively to leadership in this unit. The compound was quiet now, most operators sleeping in preparation for the intensive planning ahead. Sarah closed her eyes and let the exhaustion take over. The truth was out. The path forward was clear. All that remained was execution, the same fundamental challenge that had defined her entire career. Prove capability through performance. Lead from the front. Accomplish the mission. Everything else was just details. She drifted off to sleep with those thoughts, her mind already beginning to process the tactical problems the upcoming operation would present. Tomorrow, the real work would begin. The next morning brought intensive planning sessions. Sarah gathered Bravo Squad in a secure briefing room, the 6 operators who would execute the primary assault under her command. They arranged themselves around a scale model of the target compound, each studying the terrain with professional focus. "All right, listen up," Sarah began. "Our objective is the main building, 3 stories, suspected to house 2 high-value targets on the 2nd floor. Intelligence indicates 8 to 12 hostile forces inside, armed and alert." One of the operators, a muscular staff sergeant named Cooper, leaned forward. "What's the breach plan?" "We split into 2 elements. Alpha element breaches the east entrance. Bravo element takes the west. We go simultaneously at 03:30 hours. Sarah indicated the paths on the model. Alpha clears the stairwell and pushes to 2nd floor. Bravo secures ground floor and provides support. Cooper nodded. "Who's running point on Alpha element?" "You are." Sarah met his gaze directly. "Martinez and Reeves with you. I'll lead Bravo element with Jackson, Foster, and Kim." The operators exchanged glances. Cooper spoke carefully. "Ma'am, no disrespect, but leading from the 2nd element means you won't be first through the breach. Most SEAL team leaders run point." "True, but this operation requires coordination between elements more than individual heroics. I need to maintain command and control while we're executing." Sarah gestured to the model. "If Alpha gets bogged down on the stairs, Bravo needs to adapt immediately. I can't do that if I'm stacked on point." "Makes sense," Martinez said. "What's the contingency if we hit heavy resistance?" "We collapse both elements and push together. No one operates isolated." Sarah outlined the fallback positions. "Air support is on standby if we need emergency extract, but that's last resort only." They spent 3 hours rehearsing the assault, walking through every phase step by step. Sarah watched her squad work, noting their individual strengths and tactical instincts. Cooper was aggressive but controlled. Martinez had excellent situational awareness. Reeves moved efficiently, never wasting motion. The Bravo element operators showed similar competence. By afternoon, they moved to the kill house for live rehearsals. The facility had been configured to match the target building's layout as closely as possible. Sarah positioned herself at the west entrance with her element, while Cooper's team stacked on the east. Execute, Sarah commanded. Both elements breached simultaneously. Flashbangs detonated, filling the space with light and sound. Sarah flowed through the doorway behind Jackson, her rifle up and tracking. First room clear. Second room. Hostile target engaged and neutralized. They pushed deeper into the structure. Through the walls, she could hear Cooper's element clearing the stairwell. Gunfire, shouting, the crash of doors being kicked open. Sarah's element secured the ground floor methodically. Each room cleared with precision. Bravo ground floor secure, she transmitted. Alpha status? Alpha at second floor landing, Cooper responded. Heavy contact, 3 hostiles down, pushing through. Sarah held her element at the stairwell base, ready to reinforce if needed. The seconds stretched. More gunfire from above, then Cooper's voice again. Alpha has second floor secure. Both packages located and secured. Bravo copies. Beginning exfil. They ran the drill 6 more times that afternoon, refining movements and timing with each iteration. By the final run, the squad was operating with synchronized precision, each operator anticipating the other's movements. After the last rehearsal, they gathered for an after-action review. Sarah stood before her squad, noting their exhausted but focused expressions. Good work today. We're ready for this operation. She pulled up timing data on her tablet. Our break-to-secure time is down to 4 minutes, 30 seconds. That's faster than the planning estimate. What about the real-world variables? Reeves asked. Intel could be wrong about enemy numbers or positions. Then we adapt. Sarah set down the tablet. The fundamentals don't change. Clear rooms methodically, maintain communication, support each other. Everything else is just problem-solving in real time. Cooper stood. Ma'am, I want to say something. When we heard a SEAL was taking over Bravo Squad, some of us were skeptical. Different service branch, different tactical approaches. He glanced at the other operators. But after today's rehearsals, I'm confident in your leadership. You know what you're doing. The other squad members nodded agreement. Sarah felt the weight of their trust, earned through demonstrated competence rather than assumed authority. I appreciate that, and I'm confident in all of you. Tomorrow night, we're going to execute this mission professionally and bring everyone home safe. The evening brought final equipment preparation. Sarah meticulously checked every piece of her kit, from rifle optics to communication gear to medical supplies. Other operators did the same throughout the compound, the pre-mission ritual familiar and comforting. Hayes found her in the armory after dark. She looked up from cleaning her weapon to see him standing in the doorway. Your squad looks ready, he said. They are. Good operators, solid tactical instincts. Hayes moved closer, lowering his voice. This is a significant leadership test. Higher risk than your previous operations here. Multiple moving parts, split elements, high-value targets. A lot can go wrong. I understand, sir. I know you do. Hayes paused. Look, I'm not questioning your capability. Your SEAL record speaks for itself. But leading a squad in this unit is different from what you're used to. Different culture, different command structure. The fundamentals are the same. Clear objectives, trust your people, adapt when necessary. True enough. Hayes straightened. One more thing. There's still a few operators who feel you got this assignment too quickly after your background was revealed. They're watching to see if you succeed or fail. I can't control their opinions, sir. I can only control my performance. Fair answer. Hayes turned to leave, then stopped. For what it's worth, I think you're going to do fine tomorrow. You've proven yourself repeatedly. This is just the next step. After he left, Sarah finished her weapon maintenance and headed back to her quarters. The compound was quiet, most operators already asleep or preparing to sleep. She lay on her bunk and reviewed the mission one final time in her mind, visualizing each phase from breach to exfil. Her phone buzzed. A message from Torres. Leading your first op with a new squad tomorrow. How are you feeling? Sarah typed back. Ready. Squad is solid. Plan is sound. His response came quickly. That's the right mindset. Trust your training. Trust your people. You got this. She set the phone aside and closed her eyes. Sleep came slowly, her mind continuing to process tactical problems even as her body relaxed. She dreamed of breaching doors, clearing rooms, the controlled chaos of close-quarters combat that had defined so much of her career. The alarm woke her at 0200 hours. Sarah dressed quickly, gathered her equipment, and made her way to the staging area. Bravo Squad was already there, conducting final checks. They looked alert and focused, the nervous energy of pre-mission anticipation controlled and channeled. Squad leaders, final brief in 5 minutes, Hayes announced over the compound speakers. Sarah joined Torres, Rodriguez, and the other leaders in the operations center. Hayes reviewed the mission timeline one last time, emphasizing synchronization between elements. All 3 squads breach at exactly 0330, he said. Alpha Squad takes the north building. Charlie takes the south. Bravo takes the primary. He looked at each leader. No deviations from timing unless we have mission aboard. Questions? No one spoke. Good. Hayes checked his watch. Wheels up in 30 minutes. Good hunting. The squads loaded into helicopters as the first hints of dawn appeared on the horizon. Sarah sat with her team, running through mental checklists as the aircraft lifted off. Beside her, Cooper loaded his rifle and verified his night vision was functioning. Across the cabin, Martinez reviewed building schematics one final time. The flight took 40 minutes. Sarah watched through the window as the terrain shifted from base to desert to the rocky outcroppings surrounding the target area. The compound appeared in the distance, a cluster of buildings barely visible in the pre-dawn darkness. 2 minutes, the crew chief signaled. Bravo Squad performed final equipment checks. Rifles charged, night vision activated, communications verified. Sarah felt the familiar pre-assault focus settle over her, everything else falling away except the mission ahead. The helicopters flared and landed. Teams flowed out quickly, establishing security as the aircraft lifted off. The compound was 800 meters away, close enough to see, but far enough to avoid premature detection. All elements moved to assault positions, Hayes transmitted. Sarah led Bravo Squad forward, moving through the darkness with tactical discipline. They reached their staging point, a low wall 50 meters from the target building. Cooper's element stacked on the east side, while Sarah's team positioned at the west entrance. All elements report ready status, Hayes ordered. Alpha ready, Torres transmitted. Charlie ready, Rodriguez followed. Bravo ready, Sarah confirmed. Stand by. Hayes paused. Execute in 30 seconds. Sarah's world narrowed to the door in front of her. She controlled her breathing, checked her squad's positioning one final time, and prepared for breach. Beside her, Jackson held the breaching charge. Foster and Kim stacked tight behind her. Execute now. The charges detonated simultaneously on both sides of the building. Sarah's element flowed through the shattered doorway into smoke and chaos. The mission had begun. Sarah moved through the smoke, her rifle tracking systematically across the room. First room clear. She signaled Foster forward. They flowed to the next doorway, as Cooper's element could be heard engaging targets on the opposite side of the building. Contact, Cooper transmitted. Stairwell, multiple hostiles. Bravo copies, Sarah responded. Ground floor moving. Her element pushed deeper into the structure. A hostile appeared from a side room, weapon raised. Jackson engaged twice, clean hits. The hostile dropped. They continued clearing, room by room, maintaining tactical discipline despite the chaos. Through her night vision, Sarah saw Foster signal threat ahead. She moved up to his position and observed 2 hostiles barricaded behind furniture in what appeared to be a common area. They were firing toward Cooper's position on the stairwell, unaware of Bravo elements' approach from behind. Jackson, Foster, on my mark we take them simultaneously, Sarah transmitted on squad frequency. Left target mine, right target yours. She counted down with hand signals. 3, 2, 1. Both operators fired. Both hostiles went down before they could react to the new threat. Cooper, stairwell should be clear from your side now, Sarah transmitted. Copy, moving up. Sarah's elements secured the ground floor, checking every corner and closet. The building was larger than the models had suggested, with additional rooms not shown in intelligence reports. She adapted quickly, directing her team to clear the unexpected spaces while maintaining communication with Cooper's element. Alpha at second floor, Cooper transmitted. Heavy resistance, taking fire from multiple rooms. Sarah made a decision. Bravo element moving to reinforce. Jackson, you're in charge of ground floor security. Foster, Kim with me. They moved to the stairwell. Above, the sound of sustained gunfire indicated Cooper's element was fully engaged. Sarah led her reinforcement team up the stairs, using tactical movement to minimize exposure. She reached the second floor landing to find Cooper's element pinned down by fire from a long hallway. Multiple hostiles were positioned in doorways along the corridor, creating overlapping fields of fire. Cooper, we're coming up on your left flank, Sarah transmitted. Suppressing fire on my mark. Ready. Sarah counted down again. Then Cooper's element opened up with sustained fire down the hallway. While the hostiles focused on that threat, Sarah's team moved along the left wall, using the angle to engage the nearest hostile positions. 2 targets down on left side, Sarah reported. Keep pressure on the right. The tactical problem unfolded like a puzzle she'd solved dozens of times before. Identify the strongest defensive position, suppress it, flank it, eliminate it. Then move to the next position and repeat. Within 2 minutes, the hallway was clear. Second floor secure, Cooper transmitted. Moving to target rooms. Sarah's element provided cover as Cooper's team breached the suspected high-value target locations. The first room was empty. The second held 1 target, secured quickly and without resistance. The third room contained the second target plus 2 additional hostiles who opened fire immediately. Taking fire, room 3, Cooper called out. Sarah moved to the doorway and assessed the situation. Cooper's element was pinned at the entrance by hostile fire from behind overturned furniture. The high-value target was visible in the back corner, unarmed but trapped by the firefight. I have an angle from here, Kim transmitted. Can engage the right hostile without hitting the package. Do it, Sarah ordered. Kim fired twice from his position in the hallway. The right hostile dropped. Sarah used the distraction to move into the room at an angle, engaging the left hostile before he could redirect his fire. 3 shots, center mass. Threat eliminated. Cooper's element flowed into the room and secured the high-value target. Package 2 secured, Cooper reported. Bravo has both packages, Sarah transmitted to Hayes. Beginning exfil. Copy Bravo, Hayes responded. Alpha and Charlie are securing their objectives. Well done. The exfiltration required moving both capture targets back through the cleared building and out to the extraction point. Sarah's element led, while Cooper's provided rear security. They moved quickly but carefully, aware that additional hostiles could emerge from anywhere. They reached the ground floor without incident. Jackson had the exit secured, no contact since the main assault. The squad moved into the open, heading toward the rally point where helicopters would extract them. Movement, east perimeter, Jackson suddenly transmitted. Multiple contacts approaching. Sarah redirected her squad, establishing defensive positions while protecting the captured targets. Through her night vision, she counted at least 6 hostiles moving toward their position. Reinforcements arriving too late to defend the compound, but early enough to complicate the extraction. All elements, Bravo has contact on exfil route, Sarah transmitted. 6+ hostiles engaging now. Alpha moving to support, Torres responded immediately. Sarah's squad engaged the approaching hostiles with disciplined fire. 2 went down quickly. The others scattered, seeking cover behind vehicles and walls. The firefight intensified as more hostiles appeared from the compound's perimeter. Cooper moved his element to flank the hostile position while Sarah maintained frontal pressure. The tactical coordination was seamless, years of training and recent rehearsals combining into fluid execution. 3 more hostiles down, Cooper reported. Remaining contacts retreating. The helicopters appeared overhead, their arrival perfectly timed. Sarah's squad collapsed their position and moved to the landing zone with the capture targets. Alpha and Charlie squads converged from their objectives, all mission elements successful. The extraction was textbook perfect. All squads loaded within 90 seconds, the captured high-value targets secured in the center of the formation. The helicopters lifted off as the compound fell away beneath them. Inside the aircraft, Sarah's squad removed their helmets and began post-mission checks. Cooper leaned across the cabin toward her, his expression showing clear respect. "That flanking maneuver on the second floor saved us. We were stuck until you came up on the angle." "Textbook tactical problem," Sarah replied. "You would have solved it. Maybe, but you solve it faster." Cooper extended his fist for a bump. "Good leadership, ma'am. Really good." The other squad members echoed the sentiment. Martinez nodded with clear approval. Reeves gave a thumbs up. Foster and Kim were already recounting specific moments from the assault, their energy high from the successful mission. The flight back took 40 minutes. Sarah used the time to mentally review the operation, cataloging lessons learned and noting areas for improvement. The unexpected room layout, the reinforcements during exfil, the second-floor hallway problem, all valuable data for future planning. They landed at the compound as dawn fully broke. Hayes waited near the operations center with the rest of the command staff. The squads filed off the helicopters, exhausted but satisfied with the mission outcome. All objectives secured, 0 friendly casualties, 3 high-value targets captured, Hayes announced. Outstanding work across all elements. He looked directly at Sarah. Bravo Squad's performance was exceptional. Lieutenant Shun, your tactical leadership was exactly what this operation required. Thank you, sir. The debriefing lasted 2 hours. Each squad leader presented their after-action report, analyzing successes and challenges. When Sarah presented Bravo Squad's report, she highlighted Cooper's aggressive stairwell clearance and Jackson's defensive work during exfil. Hayes asked pointed questions about the second-floor hallway engagement. Sarah walked through the tactical problem step by step, explaining her decision-making process. Torres listened carefully, nodding at several points. "That's SEAL tactical doctrine," he said when she finished. "Suppress, flank, eliminate. You executed it perfectly under pressure with a squad you'd only been leading for 2 days. The fundamentals work regardless of unit," Sarah replied. "Good tactics are good tactics." After the debriefing concluded, operators approached Sarah individually. Several acknowledged her leadership directly. Others asked technical questions about specific tactical decisions. The dynamic had shifted completely from her first days at the compound. Torres pulled her aside near the exit. "That was a masterclass in small unit leadership. Your squad responded to you perfectly because you earned their trust through competence." He paused. "Hayes is going to offer you a permanent leadership position. I'd recommend accepting. I'll consider it." "Don't just consider it. You belong here, leading operations. That's where your capability is best utilized." Torres smiled slightly. "And between you and me, this unit needs more leaders who can think tactically under pressure. You've proven you're one of them." Dalton joined them, having observed the debriefing. "I was wrong about you when you first arrived," he said bluntly. "I thought you were a support officer who might be able to handle basic operations." He shook his head. "You're an elite operator who can lead complex assaults. That's a significant difference." Rodriguez approached with Kim. "Your call on reinforcing Cooper's element was perfect timing," Rodriguez said. "Another 30 seconds, and they would have been seriously pinned down." Kim added, "And that shot I took in room 3, you gave me the green light without hesitation. That's trust in your team's capability. Good leaders know when to delegate." Sarah felt the weight of their respect, earned through demonstrated performance in the most challenging circumstances. This was different from the acknowledgement after the first operation. That had been recognition of individual skill. This was recognition of leadership capability, of the ability to command a squad in combat and bring everyone home safely. Hayes called her back to his office that afternoon. She entered to find him reviewing the operation reports one final time. "Sit down, Lieutenant." Hayes set aside the documents. "I'm not going to waste time with lengthy praise. You know you performed well. The question is what comes next." "Sir?" I'm offering you permanent command of Bravo Squad. Torres has recommended it. Your squad members have endorsed it. And frankly, you've earned it. Hayes leaned forward. This unit needs capable leaders. You've proven you're one of them. Sarah considered the offer. Permanent assignment meant commitment, meant fully integrating into this unit's structure rather than remaining a temporary addition. I accept, sir. Good. Hayes pulled out new assignment orders. You'll maintain your current rank, but with full squad command authority. We have 3 more operations in the pipeline over the next 2 months. You'll be leading Bravo on all of them. Understood, sir. One more thing. Hayes' expression grew more serious. You came here wanting to prove yourself on merit rather than reputation. You've done that. But don't forget that your SEAL background is an asset, not something to minimize. This team respects both what you've done here and what you did before. Use all of it. I will, sir. Dismissed. Sarah left the office feeling a sense of completion. The journey from doubted newcomer to respected squad leader had been challenging, requiring her to prove capability repeatedly while concealing significant experience. But the outcome validated the approach. She walked across the compound toward her quarters as the afternoon sun heated the air. Operators nodded as she passed, the gestures carrying genuine respect. She'd earned her place here through performance, through leadership under fire, through demonstrated competence when it mattered most. The questions about her background had been answered. The doubt had been eliminated. The truth had been revealed and accepted. Now she could operate openly, leading from the front without concealment or reservation. Sarah reached her quarters and sat on her bunk, finally allowing herself to relax completely. The proving was done. The acceptance was real. Everything that came next would be built on this foundation of earned respect and demonstrated capability. It was exactly what she'd sought when she requested reassignment. The opportunity to prove herself on merit, to lead through competence, to be valued for what she could do rather than what her file claimed she should be able to do. She'd succeeded, and in succeeding, she'd found where she truly belonged. 3 weeks later, Sarah stood in the operations center reviewing mission plans for the unit's next deployment. The walls were covered with updated intelligence imagery, target analysis, and tactical diagrams. Bravo Squad had successfully completed 2 additional operations since her permanent assignment, both executed with the same precision that had defined that first leadership mission. Cooper entered carrying coffee and a stack of equipment requisition forms. Morning, ma'am. Got the new optics approved for the squad. Should be here by next week. Good. Sarah took one of the coffee cups. How's Martinez doing after that knee injury? Medical cleared him for full duty yesterday. He's already back in the gym, making up for lost time. The easy familiarity between them reflected the bond built through shared operations and mutual respect. Bravo Squad had become a cohesive unit, each member understanding their role and trusting Sarah's leadership without reservation. Hayes entered the operations center with Torres and Rodriguez. Squad leaders, conference room in 5 minutes. We have new tasking from command. They gathered around the conference table, pulling up the classified brief on the main display. Hayes outlined a complex multi-phase operation requiring coordination between all 3 squads over a 72-hour period. The target was a network of compounds suspected of housing enemy leadership and weapons caches. This is our most ambitious operation to date, Hayes said. Multiple objectives, extended timeline, significant enemy presence. He looked at each squad leader. I need your best planning on this one. Initial concepts due in 48 hours. Sarah studied the imagery, already identifying potential approach routes and breach points. The tactical problem was complex but solvable with proper coordination. Beside her, Torres was doing similar analysis, his years of experience evident in how quickly he assessed the terrain. After the briefing, Sarah returned to find Bravo Squad assembled in their team room. They'd heard about the new mission through the informal communication network that existed in every military unit and were eager for details. All right, listen up, Sarah began. We have a complex operation coming up. Multiple targets, extended duration, full unit commitment. She pulled up the preliminary imagery on the team room display. Start thinking about equipment loads for sustained operations and brush up on your demolition skills. We'll likely need them. The squad absorbed the information with professional focus. These were operators who'd proven themselves repeatedly, who trusted their leadership and each other. The doubt that had defined Sarah's early days at the compound was completely absent, replaced by earned confidence and mutual respect. That afternoon, Dalton found Sarah at the range where she was conducting marksmanship refresher training with her squad. He waited until they took a break before approaching. "Got a minute?" he asked. "Sure." Sarah secured her rifle and joined him away from the firing line. "Command is putting together a training package for other units on advanced tactical leadership," Dalton said. "They want experienced squad leaders to contribute to the curriculum." "Your name came up. I'm honored, but I've only been leading Bravo for 3 weeks. Dalton smiled. "Yeah, but you've run 4 successful operations in that time, with 0 friendly casualties and exceptional mission outcomes. Plus your SEAL instructor background means you actually know how to teach, not just do." "I'll think about it." "Do more than think about it. The community needs leaders who can both operate and educate. You're one of the few who excel at both." Dalton started to walk away, then turned back. When you first showed up here, I gave you maybe 2 weeks before you requested transfer. Thought you'd wash out or get frustrated with how we questioned everything about you. What changed your assessment?" "You did. By not quitting, by proving every capability you claimed, by earning respect the hard way instead of demanding it based on credentials." Dalton's expression grew serious. "That's leadership. Real leadership. The kind this community needs more of." After he left, Sarah returned to the range. Her squad was already setting up for the next drill, their movements efficient and coordinated. She watched them work, noting how far they'd all come together. These operators had gone from skeptical observers to trusted teammates, from questioning her every decision to executing her orders with confidence. The evening brought a surprise. Hayes called a unit formation, which was unusual outside of formal ceremonies. Sarah joined the other operators in front of the operations center, curious about the purpose. Hayes stood before the assembled unit, his command staff behind him. "Gentlemen and lady, we don't do this often, but when exceptional performance deserves recognition, we acknowledge it properly." He called Sarah forward. "Lieutenant Chun has been with this unit for 2 months. In that time, she's participated in 7 combat operations, led 4 of them, and demonstrated tactical excellence that has elevated our entire operational capability." Hayes pulled out a commendation certificate. "For sustained superior performance in combat operations and outstanding leadership under fire, Lieutenant Sarah Chun is hereby awarded the unit's Operator of the Quarter distinction." The assembled operators applauded. Sarah accepted the certificate, genuinely surprised by the recognition. Hayes shook her hand firmly. "You've earned this and more," he said quietly. "You've proven that capability transcends service branch, gender, or preconceptions. That's a valuable lesson for this entire unit." "Thank you, sir." Torres approached as the formation dispersed. "About time they recognized your contributions formally. The team has known for weeks you deserve this. I couldn't have done it without Bravo squad support." "That's exactly the right answer." Torres smiled. "You become one of us, Chun. Not just accepted, but valued. That's earned, not given." The next morning, Sarah conducted planning sessions with her squad for the upcoming complex operation. They worked through multiple scenarios, identifying challenges and developing contingency plans. The collaborative approach reflected the trust that now defined their relationship. Ideas flowed freely, with squad members comfortable offering suggestions and Sarah confident in accepting good input regardless of source. Kim raised a tactical concern about one of the breach points. "Ma'am, this angle gives us limited visibility of the interior before entry. That's a significant risk." "Agreed." Sarah studied the imagery. "What if we use a micro-drone for preliminary reconnaissance? Get eyes inside before we commit." "That could work." Kim pulled up drone specifications. "We need about 60 seconds of overflight time to map the interior. Plan for it." Sarah made notes on her tablet. "Cooper, make sure we have drone operators certified for your element." The planning continued for hours, each phase refined until the squad was confident in their approach. This was leadership through collaboration, using each operator's expertise to build the strongest possible plan. That evening, Sarah found Rodriguez in the operations center reviewing logistics for the upcoming mission. He looked up as she entered. "Your squad's preliminary plan is solid." Hayes was impressed with the detail level. "Team effort. Everyone contributed. That's good leadership." Rodriguez set down his tablet. "You know what's interesting? When you first arrived, some operators worried that having a female SEAL would create issues. Either she'd demand special treatment or the team would treat her differently. And now you're just Chun, Bravo squad leader, one of the best tactical minds in the unit. The fact that you're a woman and a SEAL is just background information, not the defining characteristic." Rodriguez smiled. "That's how it should be." Several days later, as the unit prepared for the complex operation, Sarah received a message from Naval Special Warfare Command. Her former commanding officer wanted to discuss her experience with the joint unit and whether she'd consider returning to the teams. She read the message twice, considering the implications. Returning to Naval Special Warfare would mean going back to familiar territory, operating with people who knew her background and capabilities from the start. But staying here meant continuing to build something new, to lead a squad that valued her for demonstrated performance rather than historical reputation. Sarah drafted a response. "Thank you for the offer, sir. I'm honored by the consideration. However, I believe my current assignment allows me to contribute significantly to joint operations capability. Request to remain with current unit." She sent the message before she could second-guess the decision. This was where she belonged now, where she'd proven herself completely, where she could lead without the weight of preconceptions or assumptions. The compound had become home. Bravo Squad had become family. The doubt that had defined her arrival had transformed into respect, the questions into trust, the skepticism into confidence. Torres found her later that evening. "Heard you turned down a return to the teams. Word travels fast. Always does." Torres leaned against the wall. "That was the right call. You've built something important here. Leadership that your squad trusts completely, respect from the entire unit, a track record of successful operations. Starting over somewhere else, even going back to the teams, would mean rebuilding all of that. That was my thinking." "Good. Because this unit needs you." Torres pushed off the wall. "We got final mission brief at 0600 tomorrow. Get some rest." Sarah headed back to her quarters as darkness settled over the compound. The base was quiet, most operators already sleeping in preparation for the intensive operation ahead. She passed the operations center, where planning continued under artificial light, past the armory, where weapons waited in precise arrangement, past the team rooms where squads had built their bonds. This was her place now, earned through performance, proven through leadership, validated through success. The journey from doubted newcomer to respected squad leader had been challenging, requiring her to demonstrate capability repeatedly while navigating the revelation of her concealed background. But the outcome was worth every challenge. She'd proven that merit transcends preconceptions, that leadership is earned through action rather than assumed through credentials, that respect comes from what you do rather than what your file claims you've done. Sarah entered her quarters and prepared for the next day's mission. Bravo Squad would execute their phase of the operation with the same precision and teamwork that had defined every previous mission. They would succeed because they trusted each other, because they'd trained together, because they operated as a cohesive unit under leadership they respected. The questions were answered. The doubt was eliminated. The truth was known and accepted. Everything that came next would be built on this foundation of earned respect and demonstrated capability. And that foundation was solid. What did you think of Sarah's journey? Ever had to prove yourself against assumptions that didn't match who you really were? Her story reminds us that real respect comes not from credentials on paper, but from capability demonstrated when it matters most. Sometimes the hardest path, proving yourself from scratch, builds the strongest foundation for everything that follows.